There you are.
Hey.
Happy birthday.
Hey, thanks. By the way, thanks for coming out. We sent out that little picture of me lighting my stogie on my birthday sparkler, which was pretty fun. Thanks for it. I appreciate it. And I should note to everybody, Drew brought me a bunch of Catholic books so that I can bother all of the Protestants at the Daily Wire.
I did.
Really nice.
That's exactly why I was going to get you Hilaire Belloc on Muslims, but then I realized we don't have any Muslims here, but we do have Protestants,
Yeah.
so I got you.
Plus, I read that one every night. Now it's an old, that's an old one.
You didn't show on Twitter how you almost set the entire bar on fire by blowing on that sparkler. The sparks were going all over the place.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't want to tell any tales out of school, but I'd had a couple of Coca-Colas at that point, you know, a few adult beverages. Wasn't quite in my right mind, so I almost burned down West Hollywood.
Well, it was an excellent party. So and it was on St. Patrick's Day.
That's right.
Is your birthday St. Patrick's Day, or is it the
My
day?
birthday is the following day,
Okay.
but I realized, you know, I'm part Irish. My
You are
grandmother is Irish.
O'Knowles. We always call you
O'Knowles.
O'Knowles.
Michael O'Knowles.
No, what we always say is, "Oh, Knowles." That's what it is, right?
I couldn't help but go out on St. Patrick's Day in honor of the McMullen and McDade side of my family.
Okay.
And but I felt 2 days of binge drinking was excessive even for me. So we did it all in one day. And it's really
Nice.
important, I think, to cover St. Patrick's Day,
Yep.
to delve into the culture, because in our intersectional culture, we can focus on one of the most oppressed, victimized groups in history, the Irish Americans. As you know, if you had the luck of the Irish, you'd be sorry and wish you were dead. If you had the luck of the Irish, you'd wish you were English instead.
Who is that?
I believe that's John Lennon.
John Lennon. Okay.
Little Liverpudlian philosophy.
They were one of the worst treated groups of people in American history and in British history as well.
People don't understand this. There's actually a big move on the left now to push back and say, oh, the Irish didn't have it that bad. Oh, they were indentured servants, but they weren't slaves for more than 7 years. Jason Riley put a good piece in the Journal, just reciting a lot of facts that people don't really remember. And even left-wing outlets like The Root will occasionally admit this. Noel Ignatiev, writing in The Root, explains that the Irish and black Americans come from bizarrely similar historical circumstances, except the Irish in many ways had it worse. The Irish who came to America in the 18th and 19th centuries, they were fleeing caste oppression, a system of landlordism, the penal laws that governed every aspect of Irish life, and established Irish Catholics as an oppressed race. We remember the Dred Scott decision, where Justice Taney decided that black people could never become citizens. There were similar laws in the United Kingdom. So, for instance, on 2 occasions, the judicial authority in Ireland declared, the law does not suppose any such person to exist as an Irish Roman Catholic. When the Irish got to America in the mid-19th century, they regularly worked with freed blacks doing manual labor. They were mocked in similar ways in popular culture. There was Jim Crow and Jim Dandy for the blacks. There was Bridget and Patrick for the Irish. And on the ride over here, the conditions were actually worse for the Irish. Thomas Sowell writes, no other contemporary immigrant group was so concentrated at the bottom of the economic ladder as the Irish. Wanted ads in America read, wanted any color or country, except Irish. 19% of Irish immigrants died on the way to the United States in the year 1847 alone. That compares with just 9% of slaves who came over on the British slave ships. Still pretty high, but more than double the rate. And that's because the British at least vaguely wanted to keep their human chattel commodities to sell them at market. Nobody cared about the Irish. So if they died, they'd throw them overboard. Now, what happened? Today, Irish Americans have poverty rates that are way below the national average, and they have median income that is way above the national average.
You know, don't lose your place. Keep where you are. But I just want to point out here, it's important to point out that lest anybody think that we are making any kind of a racial argument, the Irish in Britain were treated the way blacks were treated in the South, the American South. They were treated exactly the same as a racial matter. It was a problem with the race of Irishmen. So here's what happens when Irishmen leave the islands where they're treated badly, and they said that, oh, their race can never make it, and now they come to America where they're still treated badly and yet they're free. Here's what happens.
This is exactly right. It's why racism is so stupid.
It's so stupid.
It's because to be a racist, I guess you have to be kind of smart enough to see categories of people, but still so dumb that you don't see the categories that matter. So actually, in this book you gave me from Hilaire Belloc, he explains there are different ways that we can divide humans into category. And language, for instance, geography. He says another line of cleavage, very much more doubtful and often fantastic, lies between what are thought to be racial differences. He goes on to point out that they keep changing. So there's the Celt and the Germanic and the Slavic and the Nordic, and now they're a little bit Nordic. Now they're continental. Yada yada yada. He concludes by saying, "We shall not have to long to wait for some new fashion in this sort of nonsense. It changes every few years." But what Belloc points out is an observation that I will make about the Irish, which is that the fundamental categorical differences are both religious and therefore relate to the institutions that come out of those religious cultures. The Irish had one great advantage in America that unfortunately blacks in America haven't had, which is that the government never tried to help them. It is almost cliche at this point, but people need reminding that before the 1960s, Thomas Sowell writes at length about this, before the 1960s, when we were told that the Great Society and the Civil Rights Act were finally going to turn things around for black people, before those programs, poverty was dropping dramatically. Between 1940 and 1960, poverty rates for black Americans had dropped by 40 percentage points.
Yeah.
Out-of-wedlock birth was down, murder was down, crime was down, everything was on the way down. After the Civil Rights Act and the Great Society, all of those trends dramatically slowed by rates of 50% or more, or reversed entirely. Such as, also when welfare programs incentivized the breakup of the family, incentivized out-of-wedlock birth, what could one be expected to do but to follow those trends? The Irish didn't have this. When the Irish came to America, there wasn't a giant welfare state. They were helped by the civil society, primarily the Catholic Church and all of its outgrowths. Stereotypes come from somewhere, and the Irish did brawl and drink at much higher rates than average in America. So out of the church and out of the civic organizations around the church came the Irish Emigrant Society, came the temperance societies, which did work, perhaps not perfectly, but they did curb some of the problem. And of course, centrally, the Catholic Church, which was both a theological, ecclesiastical institution, it was also the center of the community. It was also the focal point. In the United States, the government systematically, especially beginning in the 1960s, eradicated all other aspects of that black civil society, and especially the great strength of black churches in America.
You know, people think this is an esoteric idea when you say this. They think, oh, this is getting too heady and too intellectual and it doesn't matter. But when you have a church at the center of your community, and when you are being helped by, as you say, civil society, by people, you develop relationships, and relationships cause responsibility, and you have responsibility to the help that you're getting. When you get money from the government, it is, as they call it, an entitlement. You just think that this is, you think that the money that was taken from someone else and given to you is no longer charity that creates responsibility and relationship. It's an entitlement which just drops out of the blue and therefore creates no responsibility in you. And when you say this to people, they think, oh, well, that's very, what are you going to do? Let the guy starve in the street? That's a very esoteric idea. It's not. It's the way people work. And really the way blacks went backwards after the Great Society is proof of it.
And it is so morally perverse, because charity is a lovely thing. Charity is a
and
wonderful
the
moral
person
exchange.
who gives it as well.
That's right. If I give somebody a sandwich or something, some guy wants a sandwich, I give him a sandwich, we both benefit in that exchange. I have given charity that edifies me, that ennobles me, that allows me to see the world in a more beautiful way, and he feels gratitude and love and dignity.
And responsibility.
And responsibility to you because you've given him that charity.
And he's been elevated to a human level, to your level. You've essentially said, yes, I'm a human being, you're a human being, I reach out to you.
Take my sandwich.
Yeah, which the government can't do.
When, I think Dinesh D'Souza put it this way, when Barack Obama rides up on a white horse and he puts a gun to my head and he says, give him your sandwich, none of us benefits. Barack Obama feels pride and power and hubris. I feel anger and resentment that I have to give up my sandwich, and the guy who takes my sandwich both feels entitled to it and a little bit resentful, because when one is entitled to something but one doesn't have it naturally, one naturally resents not having it. Why don't I have it? Clearly something's wrong with this arrangement if I don't already have your sandwich. It is a totally morally perverse exchange, and you can see it in various immigrant groups and various minority groups in America.
You know, it's funny. I always call this the theory of the empty box. The left thinks there's a poor man in the box, I put money in the box, a rich man will come out. It's just not the way it works, because also in the box is human nature. And human nature, the internal experience of being human, it's what all these scientist guys leave out. It's what even guys like Steven Pinker, and I love his books, but he leaves out that the internal experience of being a human being is the purpose of everything. It's what everything is all about.
That's right. They've figured out everything perfectly except anything that matters.
That's true. So you've got Peterson coming on your show.
We've got Jordan Peterson coming on the show today. We're going to be talking about the 12 rules for life. I think if I am able to baptize him virtually on the show, I think that gets me an extra big toaster in heaven. We'll see how it goes. Everyone should tune in to watch us discuss the book, and we're going to be giving him most of the show to talk about it. So it should be pretty interesting.
I told him when he was on this show, I told him he was headed toward conversion, but I don't think he wants to go.
Well, we'll just have to drag him along. You forget, Drew, you're a Protestant. I'm a Catholic.
That's right.
You know, we have ways to make you do this.
You can actually just go in the bathroom and make the whole water holy, right?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. No, thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.
Good to see you.
All right.